In recent years in the NFL, we've seen a growth in the importance of the kind of quick twitch, smaller slot receivers that can create all types of matchup nightmares for opposing defenses as offenses continue to understand the importance of stretching out defenses not just vertically but horizontally as well. And as a result, these type of prospects that fit into this mold with the success in recent years of guys like Randall Cobb and Percy Harvin and T.Y. Hilton and guys like Odell Beckham Jr., we'll see their draft stock continue to go up as teams place more and more of an importance on this throughout the National Football League. And one guy I think that's going to benefit a lot from this in the 2015 NFL Draft could very well be the little tiny pocket rocket from the Phillip Dorsett. When I watch Phillip Dorsett on film, here's what I see. I see a guy with big-time explosive quickness off the line and the elite speed to match it. This is a guy that can be a real deal, legitimate vertical threat. I mean, there aren't going to be a whole lot of defensive backs at the NFL level that are going to be able to match his speed. If you have that fear, that threat of Phillip Dorsett going deep, here is a guy that you look at and you say, here is a guy that is going to command safety attention over the top or going to command a double team, even being a smaller guy. And as a result, that has to be very appealing to NFL offenses looking at him and some of the things that he could bring to the table. But he's more than just a speed and quickness guy. When I watch him in his route running, I see a good burst and I see great suddenness in and out of his breaks. And when you combine that with his quickness and his speed, that means that he has the ability to consistently get open. When I watched him at Miami, especially this past season, it seemed like he was open every time. And not only was he open every time, he was open by quite a bit. And that's something that is only going to improve at the NFL level. That's something he's only going to get better at the NFL level. So you'd have to imagine that he'll even be more dangerous. But for a guy that small and that size, he has a tremendous ability to go up and get the ball at his highest point. He has the leaping ability to go get those jump balls, to be able to be that type of big play threat, to be able to sometimes adjust to those balls that aren't perfectly thrown, even though that is something that needs some work on his game. But you take that quickness, you take that speed, you take that suddenness in and out of your breaks, that leaping ability, and that makes him an incredibly dangerous weapon. But there are other things I like about his game too. I love that he plays with courage and toughness. It seems like to me Phillip Dorsett isn't afraid. He plays with no fear, which a guy in the slot needs to play with that type of reckless abandon, if you will, with that lack of fear. And it seems like to me he's not afraid. He plays with courage. He plays with toughness. I also like the fact that he puts forth effort as a blocker. Here's a guy that when you line him up, a lot of teams might sit there and assume that you're going to run or throw the ball because he's not going to be the type of guy that can block or do anything. So why would you put him out on the field in a running situation? He's a guy that puts forth effort and quite a bit of it as a blocker in the running game. Now, he's not that great at it because of his lack of size, but maybe in an NFL weight program he can get a little stronger. You can improve his technique, and you combine that with his effort, you can at least have an adequate run blocker that makes him a little bit harder to defend, and opposing offense is a little bit harder to defend for NFL defense because with him on the field, you don't know what they're going to do. With that said, you look at a Phillip Dorsett and there are some concerns. For a guy of his size, for a guy with his quickness and speed, he doesn't seem to be the most elusive in the open field. He seems to be a little bit on the straight line-ish type of side, if that makes sense. He's not like a natural side-to-side type of athlete, which for a guy of his size with his quickness and speed you would expect, and you don't always see that on film. He's not a guy that's going to break a whole lot of tackles because, again, he's not the most elusive in the open field. When you talk about a guy that's maybe 5'9", 180, 185 pounds, how many tackles is he really going to run through? So this is a situation where he's a guy that once he catches the ball, unless he's already gotten over the top of you, he's not necessarily going to manufacture a lot of big plays with his feet like his quickness and speed might suggest to you that he would. Also with him, I think he needs to protect the ball a little bit better. At times, he seems to kind of put the ball out there. He also has a lack of size, and with the type of skills that he has and what I saw out of him out of Miami, I get the feeling that he might be restricted to the slot at the NFL level, because he's a guy that was kind of used in a limited capacity at Miami. He was a guy that was used on a lot of deep patterns, a lot of streaks, a lot of 9 routes, whatever you want to call them. But he didn't have an advanced route tree. The routes that he did run, he was able to get incredible separation and able to get open on a consistent basis. But he's very limited, I think, in terms of what he does do as a route runner and the types of routes that, frankly, he was asked to run at Miami. And again, that's not saying that's something that can't be learned at the NFL level. I envision him being able to learn that at the NFL level. But at about 5'9", 180 pounds, like I said, that lack of size could limit his role and limit his effectiveness. And, he is a guy, again, has explosive abilities as a returner, but at times made questionable decisions. And again, comes back to the thing I talk about of needing to protect the ball. When I look at Phillip Dorsett, I see a couple of different comparisons. One might be a guy like a DeAnthony Thomas for the Kansas City Chiefs, just in terms of a guy that you line up at different places and you try to manufacture opportunities for. But the guy, in terms of a pure wide receiver that I look at the most, I see a guy like Tavon Austin. I see a guy that will likely stay in the slot at the NFL level, but that's fine because he could be very important and very productive there for a long period of time. A guy that could make a big impact as a returner. I don't think he's quite the returner that Tavon Austin was coming out of West Virginia, but Phillip Dorsett could have that type of impact, or at least somewhat close to it. But the biggest thing of all for Phillip Dorsett, just like it's been for Tavon Austin with the St. Louis Rams, it's going to be all about the system that he goes to, the team that he goes to, the offensive coordinator that he plays under. It's going to be all about how he's used. That's going to make all the difference in the world. Part of the reason we don't hear more about Tavon Austin and we don't talk more about Tavon Austin is because of the ridiculous way the St. Louis Rams deploy and utilize Tavon Austin. And my fear is that Phillip Dorsett could get to an NFL team and it be the wrong team, and they don't understand how to properly utilize him. They don't understand how to manufacture touches for him. They don't understand how to best deploy him. And as a result, they will come up with the wrong scheme for him, the wrong game plan for him, the wrong type of options for him. And as a result, it will limit his impact. I look at Phillip Dorsett, and I see a guy that's a middle second-round talent. For my money, based off of his quickness, his speed, and his ability to get separation, based off of the types of routes that he does on a consistent basis, and just how legitimate of a deep threat he's going to be, and just how much opposing NFL defenses are going to have to factor that in when defending against him, I think he's the number 8 wide receiver in the 2015 NFL Draft. Now, again, a lot of this is going to come down to how he's deployed and how he's utilized by a team. You could look at Phillip Dorsett in 3 or 4 years, and he hasn't done a whole heck of a lot because he wasn't utilized properly, and it just didn't happen. It didn't come together. But we could also be looking at a Phillip Dorsett because of his quickness, because of his speed, because of his explosiveness. You work on some of these other things, we're looking at a guy that could potentially prove himself out to be one of the 5 best receivers out of this entire 2015 draft class.